So Fadesha, as I had said earlier, is an artist curator who seeks to build an antifa and abolitionist dialogue, and particularly through cultural production as well as fun, care, and intimacy. They have always found themselves working with video, text, sound, and performance, and their artistic work focuses on body movement as an archive of a multi-generational trauma. And I'm sure they will explain a lot of this through their presentation. For them, the center is one's desire, and the party as a site of resilience and affirmative kinship. Since a long time, they've been organizing art and pedagogic spaces, and have founded Party Office in 2020. At Documenta 15, there was a series of works, including, this is going to be difficult for me to say, Workaholics Anonymous. Is that correct? Thank you. And there was a program for one of the spaces for the idea of doing nothing. And in a sense, it's an important way, excuse me, brother, as an act of survival. Party Office is, of course, an anti-caste, anti-racist, trans-feminist art and social space, which was originally founded in New Delhi. And recently, Fadesha has moved to Berlin, which had in the past also acted as a satellite location for the idea of conceptual architecture. They have been involved in producing publications, conversations of life lived, and often life lived through parties, social gatherings, and in care of communities, and with radical agencies. So I will now hand over the floor to, or the screen to Fadesha to take over and take us into Party Office. Thank you.
Hi, I actually have brought my collaborator and also the co-curator for the Party Office space, Shaunak Mahbubani. So they are here with us to save me right now. Shaunak Mahbubani is a nomadic curator writer, currently working in Berlin and in multiple sites in India. They primarily curate projects under the exhibition series Allies for the Uncertain Futures, focused on exploring possibilities of co-visioning futures grounded in pursuit of non-duality. The fourth iteration in the series, Autopoiesis, has manifestations and cross-pollination across Mexico City, Guatemala City, New Delhi, Kassel, and Berlin. Okay, and the two of us actually are collectively also have another collective, which is a curatorial and a performance collective called the After Party Collective. So one of the publications we are going to share is actually edited by us collectively. Yeah. Okay. So Party Office kind of takes its name from offices of political parties in South Asia. I think I already mentioned it, and is interested both in a party as a political group, but also party as a space for a gathering, also kinships. And then office as a gendered organizational, like an institution, and office also as an architecture. Okay. So you want to explain this?
Sure, if you want.
Yeah, okay. So I think this is the slide where I had a moment, but maybe I wanted to invite Shaunak to also sort of explain this benefit.
Yeah, happy to step in. I think one of the primary lenses in which structural oppression in South Asia and South Asian diaspora needs to be looked at is via the hegemonic structure of the caste system. And I think to understand the work that Party Office does, it's important to give a brief introduction into the way in which this system holds and circulates or withholds power. So like you can see, it is a pyramidal system with power concentrated on the top. The pyramid also serves to denote the population numbers within the subcontinent, whereas power is concentrated within a very few within a very small section of the population. The priestly caste or the Brahmins controls all institutions, actually, right from judiciary to academia, cultural institutions, bureaucracy, religious institutions. So really that the power making, as well as archiving, as well as circulating narrative, all all of those forms of memory making are controlled by the Brahmanical caste. Below that comes Kshatriyas, which are historically the warriors and the kings. Below that is the merchant caste, Vaishyas. At the bottom of the formal pyramid are the Shudras, which historically were laborers, peasants, and servants. And the historically untouchable section of society, which is also not considered part of the caste system, and they're actually a caste or avarna, are a self-reclaimed Dalit community. Dalit is a word that means broken, and it is a word that is reclaimed by people of this caste. So I think one of the opportunity, circulation, resources, all unfortunately get structured, filtered through this system. And I think Party Office is one of the only spaces, one of the very few spaces in India and then also in the South Asian diaspora, South Asia and South Asian diaspora, that has leadership from the not the top of the pyramid, and looks to overturn some of these structures of hegemonic distribution.
So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to share, and we will come to a little bit other writings which will speak of the caste system. I think it was just important to introduce it. And so, yeah, so this is the curatorial for the Kassel satellite location of Party Office. And it was curated by Shaunak and I. And yeah. Somebody's mic is on. The acknowledgement of social hegemony carries the ghost of its antithesis, social care. Those of us at the margins should consider our desire as central to our lives. By decenting the structures that subjugate us, I propose that trans, Black, Dalit, Indigenous, and people of color, those disabled, those in exile, and those taking refuge do important work in the very act of survival. While brought in proximity, we perform the nurturance of queer kinships and care as the pivotal form of labor. So this is the space, this is how you enter it. There's a reading space, which we'll come to a little more. Then there is a dungeon. There's a dance floor. In the space Party Office constructs, we consider possibilities of bodies, familiar and unfamiliar, come in intimate presence of one another. Bodies which are alienated by the environment outside if the art installation is inside. Those structurally subdued due to race, caste, religion, gender, ability, sexuality, or citizenship are estranged by heteropatriarchal settings due to a lack of access, capital, agency, or recognition. Every space holds some bodies more familiarly than others. As one takes their different ease to the place inside, we readjust ourselves to inhabit these surroundings. To be Sarah Ahmad in Queer Feelings, The Culture, Politics of Emotions from 2004 writes, to be comfortable is to be so at ease with one's environment that it is hard to distinguish where one's body ends and the world begins. One fits, and by fitting, the surfaces of bodies disappear from view. The disappearance of the surfaces is intrusive. In feelings of comfort, bodies extend into spaces, and spaces extend into bodies. The sinking feeling involves a seamless space, or a space where you can't see the stitches between bodies. This was a video installation. So we've kind of occupied the basement, which was also previously a wine cellar. The liminal time spent inside allows for a reorientation that is reflective, expanding possibilities of oneself through various movements and rhythms. Party Office invites visitors to shake off the burden of self-actualization via productivity imposed by the legacies of colonial projects, and instead seek party, play, pleasure, rest, and dance as methods towards requisite resilience. We choreograph a setting in order to fulfill what might be suggested as a collective desire. We propose to not settle for what occupies one's body and seek methods to release oneself of that structure. The installation then is a building of this abstract desire through performative temporal imagination towards how one might be able to thread a potentially emancipated past and future. So the dungeon space was titled Judgments Are Places Where We Seek to Free Ourselves. And that is also a title which is in the first edition of our book called Consent of the Governed. And this book was also released at Documenta. And so we also had a reading space. And this is an excerpt from that text. And it's co-authored by After Party Collective, which is our collective.
It's a bit of an incestuous editorial process between these two collective ideas and formations. So Consent of the Governed was triggered primarily by the passage of two legal provisions in 2019. The first was in August, the abrogation of Article 370, which has in the post-independence era, Indian post-independence era, given special privileges or special conditions of government to the territory of Kashmir, which has been internationally conflicted region and has had a long claim for autonomy. It kind of changed the whole political topography of Kashmir, where Indian forces have occupied the region and increasingly occupied with greater military strength. The second law that came into place was towards the end of 2019 as well, and called the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act. And I put these air quotes in around protection of rights because the very contestation that we stood up against was that the law does not give us any rights. Rather, it asks us to undergo medical examinations and bureaucratic processes to prove our gender identity without and then thereby be able to surveil us through this register without giving us any kind of benefits in the form of rights. And in both of these laws, the case was similar, where the law was made for a section of the society that did not have any participation in the formation of the nuances of these laws. And in both cases did not understand the lived realities of these sections of society. And so it really threw up this question of who is the government acting for, and where is the consent in this relationship between government and governed. Consent of the governed, as one may recognize, comes from the UN Human Rights Charter, Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1984, which states, 1948, I'm so sorry, which states that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of the government. And in the era post that, this relation between the mutual benefit between government and citizens has vastly deteriorated, with governments really becoming crony agencies for capital accumulation for their capital allies. And so drawing from queer theory, drawing from lived experiences of marginalized radical bodies, drawing from alternate ways of relating to one another, and specifically drawing from the forms of gathering that that govern kink play. We put this anthology, it's an ongoing series, we put this anthology together, looking at the ways suggested by artists who also have a strong organizing background, who work both in studio, but also in the field, on the streets, in forms of protest, mutual aid, and challenging government legal regulations. We put together this series as a proposition to think about what are forms of constitution making, what are forms of governmentality can learn from these practices of kink, can especially learn from practices of negotiation and work towards a policy of mutual pleasure. I think I will, do you want to read something?
No, I think so. This is the first one, which looks at the so every book considers a social stricture, again in relationship to constitution and kink, and Consent of the Governed also proposes kink as an anarchist methodology, as Shaunak just mentioned, that as a counter to the way the state kind of asserts its power. Wow. These are the few essays. These are the essays which are there in the publication.
Should we quickly introduce our contributors?
Yeah.
So this one, like while the books are titled around a certain social structure, they also work very intersectionally, bringing organizers who work at multiple intersections of organizing and of their multiple identity positions. For the first, we invited Tiona Nekia McLaughlin, who is a visual artist, filmmaker, and curator based in Philadelphia, looking at the intersection of race, gender, sexuality, and social commentary, both through historic and current critical frameworks. Dhrubo Jyoti is a journalist and writer based in New Delhi. They write in a leading national newspaper at the intersection of caste and sexuality, and they're one of the first activists in India to highlight this important intersection between queerness and the Dalit identity. Latoya Ararule is a queer, non-binary Aboriginal and Maori person residing on Gadigal land. They are an artist, but also a community organizer who fought to strike down the provisions of custody in Australia, certain provisions of custody in Australia that were leading to custodial deaths for Indigenous people. Drawing also kind of through impetus from the unfortunate death of their brother by the use of spithood by the police. Yeah.
So last year they actually got spithood. They are one of the primary organizers who got spithood banned in south of Australia.
And MF Aquinos is a multidimensional performer, stripper, and they work with a collective called Black Sex Workers Collective, and founded the Black Sex Workers Collective, and right at this intersection of body politic, labor, and access. This is just some glimpses from the publication itself. The publication was designed by Rishabh Kelly, based in Helsinki. This is Tiona's work that we see here. And here, maybe just to read a little bit of, read one of the pull quotes that give you a sense of the content of the essays. Tiona writes, "In that space, desire and play are not about belonging, or not being able to be accessed outside these forms of being and relating. Through the platform of kink, I have entered a space where there is no reconfiguration of who I am. The obstructions and restrictions of existence and relation in that space have allowed me to sit with myself and to quiet a lot of noise." And the diversity of essays also looks to go beyond only the physical play of kink, or what it is, the paraphernalia that comes into BDSM or fetish play, or the kind of iconography that is often related to these kinds of modes of pleasure. But it really sits within an expanded sense of kink. Dhrubo Jyoti, for example, looks at the way in which dignity, and especially dignity of touch, becomes a primary form of kink, or the pursuit of kink for Dalit people in India. Looking at the ways in which the constitution was molded by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to provide these, and the fallacy of social progress that has then still not allowed these modes to exist in full form. The second edition of this series is Gender, Constitution, and Kink, and we have a little excerpt from the curatorial.
In her 1919 autobiography, Rosa Parks, My Story, the Civil Rights activist recalls that the public water fountains in Montgomery had signs that said white and colored. Like millions of Black children before me and after me, I wondered if white water tasted different from colored water. I wanted to know if white water was as white and if colored water came in different colors. Jim Crow laws were applied at all public facilities in the 1980s in the former Confederate States of America and in some other US states. This was legislation on racial segregation with accounts of gender divisions as well, which the country further affirmed, and it laid out its separate but equal legal doctrine in 1876, enforcing it until 1965. Quote, "It's not about bathrooms, just like it was never about water fountains." A slogan being used in the transgender activism proposes that when as trans persons, we ask for gender inclusive bathrooms, as not every person seeks recognition in the binary or is safe even if one does, we are seeking to decolonize ourselves from this binary assimilation of bodies and expressions. The rituals that propose femininity and masculinity also lead to structured violence unto figures who perform them religiously. While biological essentialism within gay and feminist spaces promote this oppression. The signage on toilets signifies privacy for a particular gender, affirming that their safety is important in public facilities. And the bureaucratic document identifies only when you confirm in the available checkbox. So do you want to introduce the people a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So both of these publications had a pre-writing gathering, which was a public program where each contributor shared a bit about their practice and what they were thinking. And then this mode of sharing, this mode of gathering led into the formation of adjacent dialogues that we see, adjacent contributions that we see in each text. Contributors for the second edition include Caleb Brooks, who is an interdisciplinary artist, researcher, and writer exploring Blackness, transness, and collective memory. Caleb is originally from Chicago and now based in Liverpool. Jyotsna Siddharth is an actor, self-taught artist, intersectional queer activist, and writer. They're the founder of Project Anti-Caste and Dalit Feminist Archive. Jyotsna is working on a device plate called Clay at the moment. Kinkinella is a South American bitch, a technical contortionist, methodological amnesia, hedonistic exhibitionist, and hyperlink to the void. They are both, they're a researcher, pedagogue, as well as performance artist who was also one of the participant performers in Fadesha's two-channel video work, Nesting in Rapid Floods, that was also shown at Documenta 15.
How many minutes do we have?
You have around 10-15 minutes if you want to take them.
Okay, maybe we go into the next series of publications.
Okay. So that was 2 of the publications. We actually had 5 publications which we released at Documenta. So we created this kind of reading room space. One of the things, as today when Shaheen asked me to explain what is caste, one of the project that we gave a grant to, so we gave an annual archiving grant, and the archiving is primarily around anti-caste archiving. And so one of the things that we gave a grant to was a creation of anti-caste alphabets to a writer, Yogesh and Maitre and Sunil Abhimanatare. And they are the ones who've written and drawn. So yeah, it's like a to Z, like an abecedary of either like histories or monuments or people and kind of different things which one can study more over because Google is free. And yeah, so there's just few examples of what is in the, so we created this kind of, what do you call it, a projector. So a slide projector, so people could move the things around and sort of play with it. And this is the Dalit Queer and Proud is the one on the right hand side. That's the one Shaunak was earlier mentioning as Dhrubo has been drawn in that.
Yeah, along with Akil Kang and
Dhiren
Dhiren Borisa.
And another, so this was actually one of the first. So the people you see, the statues that you see, one is of Ambedkar and the other one is of Periyar. Both are people who are anti-caste leaders. So another publication we had, so yeah, the first archiving grant was given to an organization called Samta Kala Manch, who is a cultural wing of Republican Party, which is an Ambedkarite party in Maharashtra. And the people who were primary part of the fellowship are volunteers who are based in a smaller town close to Bombay called Aurangabad. And they organized towards annual gathering that happens called the Elgar Parishad. So they went from village to village to sort of gather people there is one of them who actually writes the texts, or they're called shairis, which are, let's say, slogan or songs, which the cultural group then uses to. So this book is called Towards the Dalit Structure of Archiving. It's a bilingual book. It's published in Marathi and in English. These are the texts which are in the book. Pranita Torat was the one who kind of was sort of facilitating and managing the fellowship. Koral, who writes the epilogue, is the editor of the book. And the people in the middle, which is Rukmaji Tikaram, writes a text called Prerna March, a resistance to annihilate caste. Samiksha is one of the people who writes the shairis for the group and has a text called The Women of the Land, Still Vulnerable and Helpless. Swear on your heart and tell me the truth, is your land free? Then Ashok Bankar. So these are people who are there in their early 20s, around 20, called Elgar Parishad, Remembering a Conclusion to Caste. And then you have Pooja, who's done the illustrations that you will see. So the caste system that Shaunak kind of initially shared with you. So the Elgar Parishad, the particular gathering for the year 2017 happened where with Radhika Memula, this is Radhika Memula, again, you can, who is also one of the, part of the anti-caste movement. There's a long history, more of it, which a lot of leaders have. But here she is breaking the pots of caste. So these are, again, the Shudra, Vaishya, the four structures that have been created, but the Dalits are not even within that kind of system, because another system which sort of the caste system came together was called the Varna system, which is a whole different story. But yeah, so it's there's a lot here. Maybe I want to read something which Pranita actually writes in their text. It's the last paragraph on this page. It says that it's important that a structure for a Dalit archival is created which will reduce the struggles one has to go through while archiving and give space to people to archive in ways they are comfortable with. A structure of archiving where the English language is not dominant. We must create a comfortable space for everyone to speak and archive in a language they prefer. The pressure and barriers of forms should be eradicated, and the liberty to create in forms that one wants to should be given. For example, we create archives of art forms like songs, posters, paintings, street plays, and photography. Although we need to together rethink where we can store these archives so they are accessible to our community easily. And so one of the core curatorials of Party Office is, the title is Burn All the Books That Call You the Unknown. And the two figures that we have on our installation, the one in black is Periyar, who Periyar said that that we should burn the Manusmriti, and Manusmriti is a 2000-old text, which kind of introduces the Varna system and the caste system, which is the Hindu scripture, which is referred to. It's in fact even referred to within the judiciary as.
It codifies a lot of the structures and punishments of the caste system and kind of makes them concrete to be referred to.
So what Periyar says is that burn the Manusmriti, that book, and then Ambedkar comes in later, and Ambedkar is the one who kind of is the head of the team which was writing the constitution. So he's called the father of the constitution. Ambedkar is one of the most known, most written, most read anti-caste writers, leaders. And so what Ambedkar says after he writes the constitution is that if the constitution fails to serve my people or fails to serve the people, I will be the first one to burn it. And so the curatorial proposal then of party office is called "Burn All the Books That Call You the Unknown," because the archiving fellowship is primarily a response to the desire to create books which are kind of authored in first person, where I'm writing about myself. And so that's one of the. Yeah, that's also why we have the archiving fellowship. That's also why it's the first time that a Marathi of this dialect is actually published, because the Marathi which usually gets published is in like this academic Brahminic Marathi. And so that's really important for us. In fact, even as an editor and the translator, Koral, it took us 1.5 years to find one. But when we did, it was the person who came from the similar region and therefore spoke the same sort of Marathi. And then later, yeah, so there's a whole thing.
Just an example of another satellite location where the reading room pops up.
So this is at 4A in Sydney. This was in December last year. And now there are just like small different other instances of things that happen where when we shut down our public programming, the organizers of the Black POC festival in Kassel, the festival actually released these stickers which said "We miss party office." And the day we actually canceled the public programs, there was two of people who became real dear friends, Dario and Maggie, who from Chile, yeah, or Argentina, Micro-Utopia Presses, Argentina.
Micro-Utopia Press.
Yeah, and they also sort of went around all over Kassel and different documenta venues, writing the thing on the right-hand side, which is "We miss party office." And we also have these T-shirts, which you all can buy. They are what come out of Documenta 15 for us.